This is Talk the Devils, the athletic show dedicated to Manchester United. Coming up today, we get into the story of how the club appointed Michael Carrick as the head coach until the end of the season. Lots more detail has transpired since our last show, so we'll bring you all of that. We'll have a look at what sort of football he might play in his 17 matches in charge and the men he's appointed to his backroom staff. And of course, we'll also preview the 198th Manchester derby, which is on the way on Saturday at Old Trafford against Manchester City. We've got Carl, Andy and Laurie with us, so hello everyone, and we're going to get straight into it because once again there is tons to get through, and I've not yet mentioned your story, Laurie, which has just dropped on The Athletic this morning, and that's a meeting with the Glazers and Sir Jim Ratcliffe at Carrington as we record.
Yeah, it feels quite significant, really, because I don't know the last time that Joel and Avram Glazer visited Carrington. I'm pretty sure they haven't seen the new main building that £50 million built, from Sir Jim Ratcliffe's investment. It might be quite novel for them to walk around a building that's been paid for by somebody else, and this is what investment looks like in Manchester United. But yeah. Ratcliffe, Joel and Avram Glazer are flying into Manchester. Well, they'll be in Manchester now. It's an ExCo meeting, so the executive committee meeting that they have pretty much every month, where it's the ownership team plus the football leaders at the club get together to discuss the goings-on at the club in terms of sporting and commercial. Usually it's abroad, so Monaco, which is where Ratcliffe is based, but they've changed the meeting to Manchester and Carrington, I think, so that it doesn't create even more upheaval for the people that have obviously been dismissing Ruben Amorim and appointing Michael Carrick as an interim successor, and also for the fact that I guess it gives them the opportunity to meet Carrick and have more conversations with him, ahead of what is clearly a crucial period for the club. But yeah, it's an interesting moment, isn't it, given the turbulence, the focus on the ownership and the football leaders at the club, that they are now actually in Manchester to have this ExCo meeting.
Yeah, Andy, we've not talked actually about the Glazers' role in the change in management in recent times. What do you know about what they think about this, and the fact that they aren't really a central role in it is bizarre, isn't it, for the majority owners in the club and a group of people obviously who are not very popular with Manchester United fans.
They're not popular for a good reason, because that takeover should never have been allowed to happen. Wouldn't it be wonderful if they came in and went, right, 21 years, we've had a right good ride of this. We've absolutely fleeced the clubs for hundreds of millions. We're going to leave. We're going to leave you to it now. We called up a brilliant investment. We executed it all. We're just going to leave you to it now. That would be news that I think every single Manchester United fan would agree with. But to your main point, Ian, the day-to-day decision-making has been led by INEOS, led by Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but you can't ignore the Glazers. There's been times where I've been told, they're watching with concern, they're watching with interest. One of my readers went up to Avram Glazer last month outside a hotel in the UAE and just said, it is a disgrace what you have done. And he was like, look, we were trusting in the coach, and that coach was Ruben Amorim, so obviously that's changed as well. And I think a lot of United fans would say exactly the same to the Glazers. In fact, I know people who have done. One of my friends went up to them in Vigo in 2017 and said that. And then you have this really weird thing of some people asking for pictures with them, which will never, ever wash with me, given how damaging they've been to Manchester United. They've got a major investment in Manchester United, so they can be silent investors, but clearly they're not going to see their investment run into the ground. And 15th position last year caused everybody concern. I'm sure it caused them concern as well.
Yeah, the concern amongst the fans, Carl, has never really gone away, has it? We've done many podcasts in the past about this issue and talking around, the anniversary, for instance, earlier on this year. So go back and have a listen to that. Anyone who's new to the show on YouTube, we did, more traditional podcasts about the Glazers' anniversary and the effect that they've had on Manchester United over the years. In Laurie's story, Carl, there is more detail about this moment now where there are once again protests planned by the 1958 group for the Fulham match at Old Trafford, which is on February the 1st. They're calling for a vote of no confidence in the Glazer and Ratcliffe ownership, in Chief Executive Omar Barada, Director of Football Jason Wilcox as well. Undoubtedly, there's a lot of frustration and anger about what's happening at the club.
Indeed, it was a press release from the 1958 where they described themselves as irate. And we've seen a lot of protest banners being unfurled at the Burnley game and indeed at the game against Brighton. I can understand totally why there's loads of tension. I remember Andy once used the analogy of Manchester United being a ship, and the Glazer ownership has been akin to, correct me if I'm wrong here, a brick just being placed on that ship again and again and again, and eventually that ship just starts sinking. This is a football club that has qualified more for the Europa League than the Champions League since Sir Alex Ferguson's retirement, and now is in a dogfight to get into European qualification again. And it does always stick in the craw a bit in that it doesn't really feel as if the Glazers are visible or noticeable or tend to make big decisions until they believe their earnings or potential for earnings, i.e. Champions League qualification, are threatened. And that's always been quite annoying in that it's hard to shake the feeling that the ownership group of Manchester United don't particularly care once Manchester United get into the Champions League. But once that's threatened for whatever reason, then they are moved to action. So we'll see what happens next. I don't know if I'm covering the Fulham game, but if I am, I'll make an effort to go to where the football fans are, talk to them about their feelings and what they'd like to happen next.
Laurie, do you know what's being discussed at the EXCO meeting today specifically?
I don't know exactly, but I imagine, as ever with these meetings, they will discuss everything, sporting and commercial. So clearly the sporting side of things is hugely turbulent, right? I mean, you have backed a manager, head coach in Ruben Amorim for 14 months, and then it's ended in acrimony. And that obviously raises questions for the people that put him in place. You know, Omar Barada was very much an advocate for Amorim when that decision was being taken to replace Erik ten Hag, and Ratcliffe went along with it, got on board with it, certainly was backing Amorim at that point, liked what he saw when he had those conversations with him. Jason Wilcox, I think originally was a little bit, I suppose had some caution around Amorim when they were looking at replacing Ten Hag around the FA Cup final, given the system that he played, but got on board with it. And it felt that was a pivotal moment, really, because Dan Ashworth, the sporting director at that point, was recommending different people. And this was a moment, it felt like, where Barada and Wilcox really solidified their authority at the club. And Ashworth was obviously then, cast aside, really. There were other reasons for it. It wasn't just on the head coach manager situation. There was, Ashworth was pushing back against the redundancies that Ratcliffe was trying to implement in the football department. Also, personality clash, really, as well. So anyway, we sort of fast forward now to this moment. So I think the Glazers will, be asking questions around all that. I think, United, the football leadership will be trying to explain or kind of say where they are now heading, because we still need a permanent manager come the summer. And then also commercial aspects, I think, will be looked at, because they still haven't got a training ground shirt sponsor, which could net them sort of £20 million a year, something like that. I think the shirt sleeve sponsor as well is due to expire this summer, and there's no sign of a replacement for that. So the commercial aspects of the club, which is what the Glazers still have, in writing an authority over, it's the sporting side that they have kind of handed over to Ratcliffe, although he's obviously run the club in its entirety, sort of regardless of what's been down in the contract. But they can certainly express their own thoughts on the commercial side of the club. Yeah, I think that will all be discussed. I mean, it is at every meeting, right? It's not necessarily a particularly unique situation, this, but I do think that the fact they've moved it to Manchester, that it comes at a period where fans are having deep concerns about the direction of the club, coming to the full point of potentially a protest for the Fulham game. I think there's clearly lots to discuss, but as we've sort of said before, as Andy's mentioned there, our thoughts and feelings on the Glazer ownership is there for all to see. If you go back and listen to the podcast that Ian just mentioned, you can get a full sense of what happened when they took over the club and the damage that they've done in terms of placing the club in so much debt to bring us to this point. So, whilst they might be asking questions, we should obviously ask them questions as well, and there should still be scrutiny on them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's got to be accountability. The appointment of Ruben Amorim was not a success. So the people who are party to that, if it was a success, would be praised, and if not, they'd be criticised. I also think there needs to be some balance and some calm heads, because there is a lot of anger around at the moment. A lot of it is irrational. There's a lot of people lashing out, especially online. And once again, it is often very different in real life, and people are frustrated, and I get that frustration. I felt angry and frustrated after going out to Brighton, because you feel cheated because you've invested so much into this idea that good times will come under Ruben Amorim, and then when he doesn't, but that doesn't mean you have to blow the whole thing up. I have seen some positives this season. I don't think that the recruitment coming into this season was a disaster. On the contrary, I see merit in Benjamin Sesko, in Brian Mbumo, in Senna Lamans, even in Lenny Yoro. I know he's had a turbulent couple of months. In Matthias Cunha, he's got to raise his game, but I'm not just going to write it off because we've had a really, really troublesome month. And the criticism of INEOS, I've done United We Stand for 36 years, Ian, and the fans have always hated the owners. That is the default of Manchester United fans. They've never liked the owners, and probably never will like the owners, or the decision makers, because they're the ones who have to make difficult decisions, such as ticket prices. But one of my writers put out a question the other day amid all the anger. And he just said, once again, I just want to know, to all those people who are saying INEOS out, who do you want in charge? It is a very simple question. And nobody could answer it. Nobody could answer it. Because when Manchester United went to market 3 or 4 years ago, anyone in the world could have come forward and gone, this is my offer. And nobody did. You were down to, ultimately, one person who was seen as a credible bid. I'd love a magic answer to this. I'd love Manchester United to be owned by supporters. I used to think the Barcelona model was a perfect one. I don't now, by the way, because fans are completely irrational and they vote in presidents on the promise of bringing in X, Y, and Z. And that's not a stable way of running a football club either. But I do think there needs to be some calm. I saw people the other day saying the season's over. It's not over. It's been a crap season for many reasons, with a few good points in it as well. But Manchester United are 6th and 7th. We're probably going to stay 6th and 7th for the next 30 years, knowing what this season's been like. Every time you think you can go up to 4th, it never quite happened. But we're not where we were last year. There are good players here. Good players have come back from AFCON. And I hope and support Michael Carrick and his staff to get it right. You've got to support the team in times like this. It's not all about glory. It's a difficult time. It's a really tough time. And I felt horrible after that Brighton game the other night. But what is the alternative? Got to support Michael Carrick. He's a good lad. He's a good coach. I don't know whether it'll work out. I don't know whether 6 games down the line, if he's won one of them, the mood will just turn against him. But he's very, very complicated coaching Manchester United and being a decision maker at Manchester United as well. It's very, very complicated. And just clicking for change is not always the right answer.
No, I think supporters will be differentiating Michael Carrick from some of their frustrations with the way that the club's being run. I don't think there's any question about that. And when the match kicks off against Manchester City at the weekend, there won't be a single Manchester United fan inside Old Trafford or watching anywhere in the world who doesn't want Carrick to lead the red side of Manchester to victory over the blue side. It doesn't stop, obviously, the wider concern like we've been talking about. And anger is the right word, Laurie, when you look at the comments on YouTube in particular to our last podcast. And a lot of accusations and frustration generally, which, I think we need to acknowledge.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, we appreciate everybody that watches and leaves a comment, even though I would disagree with your comment. You're entitled to your opinion, but when your opinion's wrong, I feel like I need to just correct that. So, obviously, there's some kind of accusation that we get, fed stuff by the club per se, or we are guided by them. I can just tell you that's absolutely incorrect. We are independent in our thoughts, and I work very hard to try try and figure out details behind the scenes that then hopefully enlighten fans of the club to give them a better understanding of what's going on. And yeah, fine. If you don't agree with what the club are doing, I understand that point. But you can't then just sort of make the claim that, you know, we only get stuff that is beneficial to the club. It seems odd to me that, you know, we care for the club deeply, but my passion is journalism and telling the true story of what's going on. So just to give you a little peek behind the curtain, say I find out some information and, you know, I speak to several people to try and do this, I would then check it with the club, you know, as a sort of right reply, because I want to be accurate. And now they will, you know, come back to me on certain points, no doubt. I might take them on board. I might discount them and say, well, actually, I don't, you know, feel that that's a fair representation of what's going on. And then I publish the story. But there's no way that they have any kind of authority over what we write or what we put out there. And there's been very many moments of testing conversations and difficult conversations. But ultimately, we do, you know, we understand the anger that's out there, but I would just like to correct that misconception, really, because ultimately we all care about the club and we want the club to do well. But at the same time, if there's turbulence going on, I try and figure out exactly what's going on and why, and then present what I think is the fairest story. I mean, it was only a few weeks ago.
When you fed the story about the switch in formation, Laurie?
Well, there we go. I mean, just to give you a bit of a postscript on that, you know, the club, you know, launched an internal investigation into finding out the leak for that story. So I can tell you they were very angry about it. And now, listen, people will perhaps have a go at me for that because I'm kind of allegedly leaking information that is perhaps detrimental to the club's performance. But on that one, for example, you know, I think it's a significant story if Ruben Amorim is thinking about changing his system, given how wedded he has been to the back three, and ultimately that's come to the point of him leaving the club, hasn't it? Because that's, you know, quite a central pillar in what the disagreements were with Jason Wilcox and with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who, you know, I was the one to tell people that he was, you know, in favour of a back four. So it's sort of like I'm trying to give people information and please don't use that information then against me to say that I'm only abusing it because the club have told me. But anyway, on that point, I didn't do the story until the Monday morning, because it was a Monday night game, wasn't it? So I kind of felt, well, listen, Bournemouth aren't really going to change their training setup, or they're not going to have too much of an advantage, I don't think, from having this information out there. And my view would be that I think maybe they could have their own ways of getting this information anyway. But the point stands that the club were certainly annoyed about that story. So just to give you a bit of context there, that's the kind of back and forth I have with the club, because, yeah, like I say, I grew up as a fan of the club. There's so many matches that I've been to where I've been in the stands and supporting them, and I want them to do well. At the same time, I'm trying to do my job and trying to tell people, as we all are, what's going on at the club so you can have a better understanding. So, yeah, appreciate all the feedback, but hopefully that gives you a bit more context for why we do what we do.
I find it absolutely bizarre, some of the stuff that we're seeing. I literally set up a fanzine to provide an alternative view when I was a kid. I literally funded the start of Must with money out of my own pocket with the Red Issue fanzine. Begged people to stand outside football grounds to hold up red cards protesting against ticket prices. Went to Whitehall following the Glazer takeover. Lost jobs off the back of the Glazer takeover. Lost most of my writers off the back of the Glazer takeover because they went to FC United. Massive splits everywhere. So really political, turbulent fan base, Manchester United. And just because when things are going well, I love your stuff you're writing. Just because when things are going bad and you're giving people stuff they might not agree with, I stand outside the ground and I face any supporter face to face, and it is wild, the swings of emotion. And it's not a good thing either. It doesn't help Manchester United. Like Laurie, I'm also a Manchester United fan. I want the team to do well. But the wild swings in Manchester United's fan base can be as problematic, and they stem from passion, and I think passion's a good thing, and I think loyalty is a good thing as well. Your job is to tell people what the truth is.
Let's talk about Michael Carrick's arrival then back at Manchester United. Critch has led an article, lots of people contributed to it on The Athletic. You can go and have a read if you want all the details on this. But Carl, one of the things that stood out to me immediately was the detail that Jason Wilcox had addressed the squad. I think before Carrick had arrived back at Old Trafford and said that the target for the remainder of this season was to qualify for the Champions League. I know you have spoken a few times on the show about people not saying what the target is this season. It seems an interesting time to be completely clear with the players on that.
Yeah, really interesting time. Is Jason Wilcox saying this because he looked at the league table and went, it's on, in a way that very few people expected at the start of the season. Liverpool aren't as strong as how I thought they'd be this season. Newcastle perhaps aren't as strong as what I thought they'd be this season. I mean, Bournemouth and Brighton have had a little bit of a drop off too. So some of those challenges for the top five perhaps aren't there in the same way. And he's gone, okay, now we can up the objective. Or is it something to do with perhaps the departure of Amorim? I don't know. I don't know why Jason Wilcox said it. I would like to know why he said it. And that's why I'm once again going to ask Jason Wilcox to come forward and give some sort of interview so he can explain his decision-making process. But we'll see. Darren Fletcher believes Manchester United can qualify for the Champions League. Jason Wilcox believes Manchester United can qualify for the Champions League. The players have now been told the objective is qualifying for the Champions League. They've got 17 matches to do it. The next 2 matches are very difficult, but hey, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to start beating some of the good teams and some of the bad teams too. So let's crack on.
Yeah, 7th place as we speak, 1 point off 5th place Brentford. Who would have thought they'd be in 5th place just even a few weeks ago? But anyway, that's the Premier League this season. And I think the top 5 were fairly safe to assume is going to become enough to qualify for the Champions League. England, once again, leading the UEFA coefficient when it comes to performance in Europe this season, and then obviously then having that bonus spot in the Champions League for next season. So it is on. And that's with the problems that United have had on the pitch, Carl, so far this season. Carrick being the choice, he's going to play a different way. We're beginning to get details on how he's likely to play. Obviously, there is a major caveat to this, which is the main body of work we've got to look at is what he did with a Middlesbrough team who were mid-table in the Championship when he took over compared to this Manchester United group. But how do you expect him to go about changing things on the field for United?
So, brilliant piece from Conor O'Neill on The Athletic, looking at that Middlesbrough team. I'm talking to you right now, my sort of internet browser window is slightly cropped, and I've got a video here that just says Super Michael Carrick's Borough team. So that's 25 minutes of footage I've got on my laptop that I've been watching there. Standout things right now, he plays a 4-2-3-1. One of the fullbacks tends to get really forward, and one fullback goes forward, the other one tucks in, creates a back three. He's really brought a lot of goal-scoring uplift in some players that have never really reached those heights since, most notably Chuba Akprom. So he 22-23 season, Carrick takes over from Chris Wilder when the team's 21st, I want to say. They go up to 4th. They lose the playoff semi-final to Coventry. And Akprom gets 28 goals in 38 games, gets a move to Ajax. That does not work well at Ajax, and he's never really hit those goal-scoring tallies ever since. There's been quite a few times at Middlesbrough under Carrick where they played with a second striker a lot, so someone in the number 10 position running behind the striker. So if you are Bruno Fernandes or a player like Ahmad, who likes to get into those central areas and run in behind, that can be really useful. If you're Sesko, I'd be really interested to see what Carrick does with Sesko. I've just done a big piece on The Athletic looking at his shooting in particular, and I'm sort of wondering if Carrick and Carrick's coaching staff can have some conversations and if there can be a similar uplift.
Was the data better than you expected in that, Carl? Because as I read that piece, sort of paragraph by paragraph, it felt like there was more reason to be optimistic about even what Sesko had done so far than maybe I felt before I read it.
So I think I must have watched at least 45 minutes of him, just all of his shots. And obviously I didn't want to make the piece say Darren Fletcher turned things into a back four and then all of a sudden Benjamin Sesko became amazing, because he's been doing a lot of the right things under Ruben Amorim as well. One thing that is encouraging about Sesko that had me quite concerned about Rasmus Højlund towards the end of Højlund's time at United was he's still making the runs. He's still making the runs and he's still getting a lot of shots off. You may remember last season, I was getting so annoyed at the fact that Højlund was shooting maybe twice a game and I was going, please, mate, just shoot 4 times. I don't care if it's speculative, just put your foot through it. Sesko got 8 shots against Burnley. I want to say at least 5 against Brighton. It was 4 against Leeds. He's shooting enough, and he's shooting from nice areas. If you look at his shot map, most players of his age, sort of 22 to 24 down, what I say, you get a shot map of a striker like that, and they tend to have a big cluster of shots from outside the box where they just vaguely go, I'm just going to hit the ball as hard as I can. Sesko is not doing that. He's really working to try and get onto the ball and shoot either in the 6-yard box or close to the penalty area. So these are good habits. One of the problems you have, and this is when you put the data away and look more at the footage, is he's nice. He's 6'5". He is faster than most defenders in the Premier League. And yet there are times where you're looking at him go towards goal and you're going, just hurt him. Sorry, that's the mean dad side of me coming out in that. Why are you being nice?
That's a rugby, the rugby car.
That's the rugby car.
Yeah.
Like, make him afraid of you is the thing I'm sort of yelling at Sesko. He had the chance against Brighton in the first half where he's trying to volley it and lift the volley over Jason Steele.
Yeah.
And the ball's not a nice height to get the volley, but you watch it 2 or 3 times and I'm going, I know he's trying to pass the ball into the net and you go, just hit it really, really hard. He's got a foot, he's got a right foot in particular that if you look at some of his Leipzig footage, he can really, really, really like take a goalkeeper's hand off. And sometimes I want him to do that, even if the ball doesn't go on target. If you hit the ball with such force and fury, you can make the defense go, oh, blimey, we got to be on our toes here. We've got to change the way we play because this man is a dangerous man. And I think that's maybe the next challenge. There's 2 or 3 bits in there in his footage that I thought was interesting in that he can get shots off from his left foot. He cannot quite generate enough power with his left, or he's choosing not to generate too much power with his left foot yet, trying to guide it in there. And I think that might be another thing. Can you really hit it with your left foot and take more shots with your left foot? Because that might open up more goal scoring opportunities for you instead of, and he said this as well, sometimes he can take a little bit more time to get a shot off because he's trying to work it onto his right. If he just gets one out on his left, that might be useful. And then there's also one thing that, one of those things where it's going to go one or 2 ways. Sesko likes doing this little move inside the box where he gets the ball passed to him and he sort of spins and shoots. And he's done it against Newcastle, he's done it against Forest, and he's done it against Burnley. And none of them so far have scored. And 1 or 2 things are going to happen. He's either going to do it properly, get the right alchemy of the spin and the accuracy on the shot, and score a goal that will probably be a goal of the month contender, or one of the coaches is going to go, no, stop doing that spin move, start doing it on your left, or he's just going to keep doing this forever and ever and ever, and we're going to get really, really annoyed that he keeps doing this. So that's one thing I want to put in the back of your mind there. Strikers, they're really fun to watch if you just want to go hyper granular in there. Sesko's got all the right tools. I do want him to be just a bit meaner. Sort of, if you are side on with the defender, push out his armpit, just get him off you, and then really let it fly. And I think those are the little things we should be looking at for the next 17 games between now and the end of the season. And then to go back to everything we said about Carrick, 4-2-3-1, 1 fullback goes forward, 1 fullback tucks in. That makes me kind of wish Mazraoui was back because Mazraoui is good at that tucking in as a fullback. When they defend, it's not a high press, it's a compact 4-4-2 at Middlesbrough. So they weren't the most aggressive there. And there's also quite a bit of slow build up around the back, which I'll be really intrigued there. There might be 2 or 3 times where Carrick is trying to almost bait the opposition into pushing up onto United that, particularly if it happens at Old Trafford, might get a few fans going, this is boring, attack, 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 attack.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to that. We had a question from Guy, Andy. He said, did Carrick get the job because he's a better fit structurally for how United are currently constructed than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? As I understand it, Ole is more of an old school British manager, Carrick more of a tracksuit coach. Have United signalled the Fergie model is now gone? What do you think?
I think Carrick just won it fair and square. I think Ollie felt that the meeting had gone really well. So did Michael. So did Ruud van Nistelrooy as well. But Ruud wasn't met in person because Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada already knew him from his time at Old Trafford. And there's actually some regrets that he wasn't kept on, but Ruben Amorim didn't want to keep him on. I think Laurie touched on a point which is true, that not going back to Ollie, Michael's not been given the chance. I know he had that brief caretaker role. He did well at Middlesbrough. The end was bad. It always is bad, believe it or not. That's why managers lose the jobs. I went to see him at Middlesbrough, I went to see him at Luton away. I spoke to his players, I spoke to fans, I spoke to journalists. They were absolutely raving about him. And it was a 4-2-3-1, slightly different in possession as out of possession, 4-3-3 in attack, 4-4-2 sometimes in defence. I spoke to his captain, Johnny Howson, talked about his Michael being calm in situations, but will get into us a bit in private, and he trusts us. You don't feel the pressure if you make a mistake. He's right behind you. But he's also got that instant respect, which I think Manchester United players would have for him, because he's what he's done as a player at the top of world football. He's obviously brought the people in around him as well. It's going to be very, very difficult. Michael Carrick has been working as a UEFA technical observer this season, as has Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, as has Steve Holland. So this is where Manchester United are getting the people from. And Michael's strengths are around midfield, because he was a midfielder.
Get your shin pads on, lads. Come on.
He would say to players, even when he was at Middlesbrough, you're playing a fraction too close together. He'll see things that your eye will never see, because he's done it at the top level. And then what you might look at is Johnny Evans or Jonathan Woodgate giving more advice from a defensive perspective. And Steve Holland, who's a Man United fan, by the way, Steve Holland.
I didn't realise he was from Stockport until I started researching him the other day.
Who do you support?
Yeah. Ask Laurie.
Whoa, let's not get into that.
Right? So obviously it's a big city area.
I interviewed Phil Foden yesterday. He's got a different answer.
Right? So if you're of Stockport, it's not Manchester, so there's a lot of City fans there. And Stockport County are averaging 10,000, doing well, and should mention Stockport Town, Stockport Georgians, Cheadle Town, teams like this. But Manchester United are huge in Stockport. Steve Holland grew up in Stockport. Steve Holland, don't know whether he'll thank me for saying this, but, you readers and you listeners, you want hard facts. So here they are. He used to watch United as a kid. He used to go on the Stretford end as a kid. So he's known as someone who is associated with Chelsea because he was very successful at Chelsea, which he was. A lot of players speak really well of him. Tough cookie, maybe that's needed as well. He's not someone who wants to win friends, but he does want to influence people. And a childhood Manchester United fan. So yeah, let's get him on this podcast one day where he can talk about memories from standing on the Stretford end. That'll get down well with Chelsea fans.
Exclusive. There's an exclusive for Talk of the Devils to find that out about him. I mean, Laurie, it was interesting to hear Michael Carrick. Let's talk about the backroom staff. I mean, it's interesting to hear Michael Carrick give some of the reasons why he's appointed these coaches. As far as Steve Holland is concerned, there's obviously experience from Chelsea, which Carrick mentioned, of being involved at these sort of stages. I think he's been assistant manager to maybe 3 interim managers previously at Chelsea. Off the top of my head, Roberto Di Matteo, Rafa Benitez and Gus Hiddink. He was around that. He was around Jose Mourinho's time as well. Andre Villas-Boas as well. I think the first job that he had in the first team was to be his assistant manager. So he's certainly seen turbulent times before. There's no question about that. That should help, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you look at Michael Carrick as somebody who's had, obviously a caretaker role at Man United and then 3 years at Middlesbrough, he's still, in the very early stages of a management career, isn't he? And I think we touched on this earlier, that he's perhaps somewhat of a reluctant manager in moments. Certainly that's, I think, a view that he's expressed to some of his friends. And so maybe having somebody with that experience of doing the job really at in the Premier League level, and obviously, then with England, it's a different pace clearly with Manchester United, so that's maybe something to consider. But I suppose it's 17 games, right? So it's actually, you do have quite a big gap between. Certainly, there's a couple of periods without matches coming up that are interesting, shall we say? So maybe it does become a little bit more like an international job in that regard. But yeah, the kind of the experience that he brings, I think, is certainly adds something to the coaching group that they've got. And as Andy touches on, I've certainly heard from people that he can be a difficult character. I think certainly he'll put it on people. Some people that I've spoke to said maybe that's what this group needs a little bit of. And so, yeah, let's see how it goes. It's a big challenge, as you outlined there at the start of the sort of period of this pod. But in terms of Jason Wilcox saying to the players, that the Champions League was the qualification, which is what he said to them in the meeting that they had with Omar Barada when they told them about Ruben Amorim's dismissal, and so I mean it feels like that's changed a bit from certainly the start of the season, where I think Europa League was the thing that the club had kind of budgeted for, shall we say? But given
do you think that's changed now, Laurie? Sorry to interrupt, because in some ways it would seem that the target should be less than it was before because of the turbulence that the side has been through, the fact that there is now a temporary manager, although interim's not in his job title on any of the statements released by Manchester United, which was a detail that caught my eye.
Do you think that's because, I know people have picked up on that, haven't they? Do you think that's just because they'd already called Darren Fletcher the interim, had they? And so then to have another interim, it's kind of embarrassing, right? To have an interim, and I don't know, he's head coach till the end of the season.
How long is an interim period? Is 70 matches interim or not?
Does he count as a permanent manager? Did Ralph Rangnick count as a permanent manager, given how many matches he had?
No, Ralph Rangnick was an interim manager. Interim. I'm calling Darren Fletcher a caretaker manager and Michael Carrick an interim manager.
That feels fair.
Yeah, but the club aren't. I do think that is a detail to keep an eye on, because it might just be the semantics, like you're saying, Laurie, to be fair, and maybe we could make too much of it. But he is the head coach until the end of the season, not the interim. Not the interim head coach. What do you think about the outside influence that has been brought in? It's not just Steve Holland, it's Jonathan Woodgate as well, Laurie. Obviously, there's Travis Binion, there's Johnny Evans, Craig Mawson, who's been around things in the first team throughout Ruben Amorim's time in charge and before that too. So it is an interim period. I'm going to call it that now. But these are people brought in from outside to work within this structure, which doesn't always happen when you have this sort of change and this sort of appointment.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer the question that you started, but you didn't quite finish in the end in terms of what's changed with the Champions League qualification. And I think it's just you look at the Premier League and you look at how everyone seems to be dropping points apart from Arsenal, Man City, and maybe Aston Villa to a degree. But you've got two spaces there that feel very much up for grabs. So I think correctly, United should be saying we can qualify for the Champions League here. We've not got European football. So anyway, I think that's where it comes from. But that's one thing, sort of saying it to players. I think obviously Wilcox has to do his job really in this as well and try and facilitate that. Now, people will say, is that in the transfer market? It seems like they're not going to do much business still in this January window, even though they tried for Antoine Semenyo as in terms of a fast forwarding of a sub target. But can he be of assistance in other ways? And it's a big time, big scrutiny on him, big questions about him and Omar Barada and their sort of can you actually get the team into the Champions League? If they do that, then I think the kind of perception of them will alter. But clearly, it's a crucial moment right now. So in terms of the overall coaching staff, clearly Wilcox has had a role in that because you look at Steve Holland, it felt like that was one that was perhaps proposed to Carrick, and he also had ideas about him, and I think did Ole Gunnar Solskjaer have some kind of input as well? I think we certainly reported that he'd maybe made that suggestion to the club. So, but his last job was in the City Football Group, at Yokohama F. Marinos, ended that job, dismissed from that job in April of 2025. So, you've got maybe the City Football Group connection there as well. And then Jonathan Woodgate, I think he played with Wilcox, didn't he, at Leeds? So, I mean, maybe that's problematic for some United fans, given the Leeds connection. Obviously, that was the period just before Alan Smith joined as player, and then ultimately he became a bit of a cult figure at United, didn't he, Alan Smith? But, so obviously Woodgate's someone that Carrick trusts from their time working together at Middlesbrough. Joined and was with him for basically the 3 years that Carrick was there. So, let's see what this kind of group can do. I mean, I think it is a good thing that you have people of their own standing. Certainly in Steve Holland, he will not be afraid to make his opinion clear from what we can tell from the England setup, and certainly that rubbed some people up the wrong way. But I think that when you look at the assistants that Amorim had, they'd all come with him from a very early age, and they were say like a decade younger than him in terms of Carlos Fernandes and Adelio Candido. Certainly there was a question at United: were they robust enough? Did they challenge Amorim and his ideas in a way that you kind of want to sort of have that creative friction that certainly I think Sir Alex Ferguson had, with Carlos Queiroz, for example, bringing in people from outside who had the qualities, and then you'd have disagreements, but try and work through that. So let's see if this group of people can ultimately mean that United do have that kind of stress testing of ideas and formations and selections, and then ultimately, hopefully, give positive results.
I didn't have a huge problem when Eric Cantona came from Leeds United or Gordon McQueen when I was a bit too young, Joe Jordan. Alan Smith, that wound up a lot of Leeds fans. We'll get it's interesting. Not someone I know. I thought he was a very good player who was hit by injuries. He went to Real Madrid, and what I remember of him being there is he learned Spanish quickly. So you had other players who'd go there and their Spanish would extend to one word, hola, but he actually learned it. So I remember thinking, fair play to you for that. He's someone who Michael Carrick clearly respects. We don't know how it's going to work out. All these people being put together, they've got their interesting histories. Again, it's an extremely complicated job, and this idea of reaching European football, I get why that's the target. It's not just a target, it's essential. Manchester United need to be playing in Europe next year for many, many reasons, for the fans, for the sponsorships. Sponsors like to see visibility, and to get that, you have to play a thing called football matches. And what's going to happen is the European competitions are going to play out now, and Manchester United are nowhere. I was at AFCON last week, meeting people, Manchester United, here we go. And the cliches start coming out, Scholes, Giggs, and then they stop. No one says, Matteo Darmian was a wonderful fullback. It all just stops. And
now Matteo Darmian's played in the Champions League final more recently than Manchester United, so we should...
You're right. I actually saw him play for Inter Milan in a cracking pair of games against Barcelona last year, and his career went on. One of the few players who's gone back up, actually, after leaving United.
Yeah.
But Europe should be realistic, and I just don't have a huge amount of trust that this team can get the required number of runs together. But again,
post Newcastle, you said Europa. We asked for a new Andy Mitten standard quality, and you said Europa. And
I'd take that now, Carl. I'd take it now.
I
Europa
would also
League next season.
Look, before the season started, I said if United finished higher than 8th, I'd be really, really surprised. Part of that was also because I thought Ruben Amorim would last the season. I don't think things are going to magically get better now that Michael Carrick is here and he's likely to change things to a back four. A lot of the problems that existed in Manchester United under Ruben Amorim will continue to exist between now and the end of the season. So the midfield will be a problem for a long time because Manchester United, to my mind, have a very underpowered midfield. A lot of this season, the remainder of the season, is going to rely on Casemiro being able to play 90 minutes week in, week out. Because when he goes off, the team's quality just craters. And I'm not sure if that's a fair responsibility to put on a man of so many minutes on the clock. A lot of this season will also rely on Bruno Fernandes just being a through ball threading creative genius. And while I normally have faith in that, he's now been injured for several days. So I have no idea if that's going to be the start of him being injured all the time as well. So there are 2 or 3 things in this team that I'm going, okay, maybe an uplift might happen. There might be a new manager bounce and things will crack on. But also I'm talking about a football team that have won 9 Premier League games in the last 10 months. It's hard. It's really hard. And if you are listening to this and you are reserved or downbeat or apathetic, as Andy has warned against, I don't blame you. It's a derby right now.
The mood is on the floor among the fans, but I am told, and this is from reliable sources, if you don't want to hear this, then fine, but I'm just doing my job. The mood has improved this week inside Carrington. Breath of fresh air. That isn't a slight against Ruben Amorim. This is just completely normal when a manager goes, because managers tend to leave in tense circumstances. There is tension. That's why they've lost the job. That's why they've left. So when anyone comes in, you or I could go in there. Actually, it's a terrible example because we'd probably get laughed at. But
yeah,
someone who's respected like Michael come in, you know, you will have players there thinking, you're thinking, all right, I've got a chance. I've got a new boss. I've got a new chance. If you're Kobbie Mainoo, what are you thinking this week? You're thinking, I've got a chance to go again. And last week under Darren Fletcher, to be fair to him, and you said new manager bounce. These things do exist. Unfortunately, the next 2 games are really, really difficult ones. But if United can somehow get a result, away we go.
Right, should we talk about the Manchester derby? It's going to be an hour long, this Talk of the Devils again. We always set out not to do hours because we're conscious of the fact that it requires quite a lot of your time to watch and listen along. I'm sorry, but it's such an important game. We need to preview it properly as well. I said at the very top, the 198th Manchester derby. And I don't know about you, Laurie, but as a journalist, they've been very interesting matches to cover over recent times.
That 0-0 at Old Trafford under Solskjaer.
Oh, apart from that one, maybe.
That was my favourite, remember.
There's definitely been talking points in other matches aside from that one. But the one thing about it, United's record at Old Trafford across, I've gone back 15 years, is really poor against Manchester City. So if you include the 6-1 from 2011 and start the run from there, United have faced Manchester City in all competitions 17 times. They've beaten them 4 times, drawn 3 and lost 10. It's a game to me that just makes me feel uncomfortable, if I'm honest.
Yeah. I do want to ask Andy quickly, out of the 198 that you've seen, Andy, which one was your favourite?
Of the derbies, I love there's a 3-2 at Main Road in 93.
Yeah, never mind. He's actually answering this seriously. I was trying to suggest that he might be old enough to have attended on 198, Andy, but
I thought when he said 198,
I appreciate the sincerity.
I thought he was going to be saying the 115 charges against Manchester City. When are we going to get a look into them? But obviously no. But you know, that shouldn't be. That I'm being serious. That shouldn't be forgotten about either. You know, we have issues that affect Manchester United. I think there are a lot of United fans wondering when.
United's
those
perspective on
charges
that might have changed
answered.
given the hires that were made under Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Back to the football for a moment.
Please.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, the two that stand out for me in terms of victories, the 2-1 under Ten Hag was good, you know, and then the 2-0 under Solskjaer just before lockdown. So can United harness that? Can they sort of channel that? And listen, I think Michael Carrick certainly is somebody that can set up teams for a specific match, right? I remember away at Villarreal, he made some certain tweaks that certainly helped them in that game, and I think at Middlesbrough he's done that as well. So he will look at City and think that they are gettable City. I mean, I watched the Brighton game where they created chances, and Brighton, to be fair, were actually sort of almost the masters of their own downfall in that game because they're passing out from the back, and that's where City got a couple of their big chances. But they aren't quite. I don't know, they went to St James's Park and won sort of in the end fairly comfortably, and they absolutely obliterated Exeter in the FA Cup. But it feels like they are fragile in moments. So hopefully United with Mbeumo and Ahmad back, do they both? They can't both, I guess, come straight back into the starting lineup, particularly if you're doing a 4-2-3-1. Well, go on to would you drop Sesko then? That's kind of the only way really that you could get both of them in, unless you drop Cunha.
You could drop either of them. It depends what the game plan is, but I don't think that it's impossible both those players come straight back in and start.
Okay.
Certainly if they want more pace in those positions and more direct threat in those positions as well.
I think the direct threat is going to be a key point, isn't it? That feels the way to get at City. And so you do want your players that are good at running in behind, which Mbeumo is. You basically want what Dalot is very smart at doing, running in behind, but then a finisher of kind of Mbeumo's quality, although I know he has missed chances this season. So, yeah, I mean, it does. And the midfield 3 is going to be interesting, right? Because if he does then put Bruno Fernandes at number 10, which we expect, I suppose, then it does actually mean that you've got Kobbie Mainoo, Casemiro and Manuel Ugarte fighting for those 2 places. So it opens up another midfield spot, doesn't it?
Laurie, how many times do you think Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro have started together in all competitions since the 1st of September 2024?
Oh, wow. So if we're going back that far.
Yeah.
Is it going to be none? Got to be
it's
one.
2.
2, okay. 2.
They've
Wow.
started 2 games together. The statement 4-0 win over Everton that everyone remembers so fondly.
Go back to it.
And the 1-1 draw away at Bournemouth in April 2025,
So
I think, when Rasmus
undefeated.
Højlund scored.
They should have
right
won,
near the
should they have
end.
won that game as well? I feel like they were unlucky in that game.
Weirdly, they started together the first 4 competitive games of last season, the Community Shield and the first 3 Premier League games. And then since then, the only 2 matches they've started together is those 2.
Right.
So, I mean, there's injuries in there. There's obviously change of manager. There's 3 different managers in there. But yeah, it's not a duo that's been used a lot in Manchester United's central midfield across the last 18 months. So that'll be something to keep an eye on, how they are reunited. You said about City being vulnerable as well. I mean, they've got issues at centre-back. Their first choice 2 this season have been Ruben Diaz and Josko Vardiol, both of them missing. John Stone's also out as well, so that's maybe their first 3 choice centre-backs out. Abdukir Kusanov and Max Elaine had been starting together across the last 3 matches. The reason they looked a bit shaky maybe in that Brighton game is that Elaine made his full debut for City, had only been back, I think, for 1 training session after a loan at Watford. But them 2 have started these 3 games that you mentioned before, Brighton, the FA Cup and the League Cup together. So this would potentially be their 4th match together. So that's definitely a weak point for United to press on. Nathan Ake has been playing left back as well, and had his left knee, I think I'm right in saying, heavily strapped in these games too. So I get the impression that he's maybe not completely fit. They've got Ryan Aït-Nouri back from AFCON, like United have got Amad and Mbeumo back, so maybe there's an option there to switch things up. But United should be feeling positive about this, Andy, shouldn't they? There should be a freshness to everything. There should be an energy inside Old Trafford, getting behind, Michael Carrick and the new coaching staff and trying to push this team on to start a new chapter, really, because, no matter what you feel about the decision of Amorim going and everything else, it's happened now. So that, there needs to be a refocusing and a re-energizing of everything to try and push this team on, with these 17 matches being a success for everyone.
I like where you're coming from, Ian, and I think you're totally right. When the game starts on Saturday, every single person in Old Trafford will be behind Michael Carrick, will be behind those players. It is a Manchester derby, but the apathy, the fragility, it can't just vanish. United's
No, I know. It's wishful thinking, isn't it?
United's form's been really poor at Old Trafford. The last time I spoke to Ruben Amorim was really frustrated. You've won 1 in the last 5. You can't beat teams at the bottom, but then Manchester City are at the top. And I'm surprised with City that they've been dropping so many points. And because I don't watch them like you do for part of your job, I didn't realise all those players were missing. Last time I saw him play was against Liverpool in November, when you had to go at me for watching City. I'm like, well, it's part of my job today as well. I've seen him play against Madrid. I honestly thought they'd chase Arsenal down and win the league. I'm surprised at that.
They might still, to be fair.
They might still, but they're dropping a lot of points. Those 3 consecutive draws in the last games. Would you accept a draw? Because United keep drawing matches in the league as well. On Saturday, I don't even want to go there. That what we had against Villa, playing well but losing, that's not good enough either. Manchester United need points. What is acceptable from these next 2 games? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. You want to see evidence that Michael Carrick has had an impact, that there's some good football. You'd love to see the players who've come back from AFCON, very good players, make an impact. God, Manchester United are just due a little bit of something, no? Even under Ruben Amorim.
You'd hope so.
There's a lot of chances being created. Got to score some of them. Carl touched on Benjamin Sesko. He's actually been one of the bright points of a very glum start to this year. United just need to have a day, don't they? And it's I don't know. Are you confident, Laurie?
Oh no, how can you be confident?
I know.
But then it's the hope, isn't it? It's the fact that they could rouse themselves. I mean, United have sort of weirdly played pretty well in the big games. I know they were easily beaten at the Etihad this season, but I would quite like them to keep Haaland quiet, keep Foden quiet. I'm sick of them scoring against United. So
keep Antoine Semenyo quiet, surely, as well.
Quiet,
he's already scored at Old Trafford this season.
Who's he?
He's got 2 in 2, hasn't he, for City? So,
but just the whole narrative around it as well, with United being close to buying him in the summer, involved this time around in January as well. It just feels like he's going to play a role, doesn't it? Considering all the additional subplots with his name.
Yeah, if you're feeling nervous about the derby, I don't recommend looking up the highlights of City versus Newcastle. That's just going to put the heebie-jeebies in you even more. Look, I believe
thought Newcastle
Manchester
played all right in that game. Do you not think? I thought they had chances.
That's why you shouldn't watch the highlights. Don't do it to yourself. Don't.
Why? Because City played badly or well?
No, you're saying they played well.
City's last goal in particular is one of those sort of frightening goals.
It's a very that's kind of goal that you just feel United at this moment couldn't score. Like there's the sharpness of it, but maybe I'm doing them a disservice.
It's fine. I believe Manchester United can win on Saturday because I choose to believe it, and because if I don't believe it, there's no point in me going to Old Trafford in the first place. So,
listen to Michael Carrick, Carl, as well. He's talking. It's only talk at the moment. It's only words. Obviously, they need to back it up with performances on the pitch. But listening to his first interview, he's talking about that special quality of going to Old Trafford and not knowing what's going to happen. The excitement in the possibility, the excitement in the unpredictability. He wants to bring a team that gets United fans, including him, off his seat again. Like I say, it's just words at the moment, but there's something to get behind there, isn't there? There just needs to be some element of positivity attached to this all. We've it's only 17 matches left in this season, but they still need to be games that we enjoy, at least elements of. There has to be something to be positive about again and enjoy again about Manchester United, surely.
Absolutely, I agree. I think for far too long, and this isn't just exclusive to Ruben Amorim, there are also points where I felt this under Erik ten Hag, and I felt points of this under Ralf Rangnick as well, where going to Old Trafford felt a bit like a chore. Was it you, Ian, who once mentioned the United fan who said, "I can't believe I come here for fun"?
Yeah.
Right? In that, when Old Trafford is good.
The escape from the frustrations of life,
Football's
supposedly.
Not the most important thing in the world, but it's meant to be the important, non-important thing. It's the thing you do when work and other drudgery is there. You go to Old Trafford and you feel excited. And there have been glimpses of that recently. I mean, my head went to another planet when Ahmad scored the winner against City in December. The other time, there was a 90-second fraction of time against Bournemouth where United swing things round, and I think they're going to win 4-3. And my head was like, "Yes, this is it." And if Michael Carrick and the coaching staff and Manchester United can provide more of those moments, that's the thing. Can Old Trafford become not even a fortress, just a nice, exciting place to go again after so many months of it not being an exciting place to go? So that's the objective. I want to have that amazing feeling where you're not really supposed to celebrate in the press box. So you're just like giving it the fist, pumping your arms underneath the desk. I want to have those moments again where if I'm a couple of weeks down the line and I'm watching the game down the television, I want to jump up after United score a goal instead of what I felt for too often, which is in the last 24 months or so, when United score, the thing I often feel is relief, not excitement. I want to feel excited again. So hopefully the derby is the start of something positive and interesting.
And
Hey, you're right. Hey, you didn't tell me the other day that Brighton only brought 800 to Old Trafford.
Here we go.
800! That's pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic for a Premier League team to bring so few to a game. Anyway, lads, carry on.
Should we leave it there? Or Laurie, do you want to add anything to it? I don't think...
I wanted Andy to give me a rousing speech because it's Derby Day.
I have to dig deep here. I think we've had some lovely messages in, Ian. There was one from somebody. I think you should read one of them.
Yeah, I'm going to actually. This is from Chris because not all the comments and emails are I'm unable to read out. This is a lovely one. So my friend Pat has been coming to Old Trafford for nearly 60 years. She watched Bobby Charlton play and is now a season ticket holder in the stand named after him. She's also a huge fan of the pod and was at the Manchester live show in November, but she will miss the derby after having had surgery last week. She's gutted and needs you to create some positive energy to get her back to fitness. I've just done that. I've tried to do that. even before I've read this out. But hopefully, Chris says you can all chip in with some positivity and hasten Pat's recovery and return to the Theatre of Dreams as well. Thanks for everything. So get well soon, Pat.
Go on, Pat.
Thank you for your email, Chris. All the best. There's anger, there's frustration. I understand it. I'm not going to tell anyone how they should feel. But let's get up for the Manchester derby against Manchester City at Old Trafford on Saturday. Let's try and hope that the fan support can bring some positivity and a positive day at last for Manchester United. We'll leave it there for Talk of the Devils. Laurie, Andy, Carl, thank you so much for being with us as always. Thank you for listening and watching and all your comments. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of Talk of the Devils. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you've not done already. Like the video and also get involved in the comments too. And click the bell to make sure that you never miss an episode with myself, Andy Mitten, Carl Anker and Laurie Whitwell. There's also our social channels at TOT Devils on Instagram, X and TikTok. Thanks for watching.